Hey everyone! Before we open today's file, please make sure to follow us on Instagram at d.s.radio, where you can find all the images that go along with today's case. You can drop us an email at contact.dsradio@gmail.com. You can find all of our socials in the Linktree bio on our Instagram profile, including links to merch. If you're feeling especially generous, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio, where you can get access to our exclusive Instagram page and make suggestions for upcoming episode topics that you would like us to cover. Speaking of Patreon, thanks to our Patreons, Riff Cult, Cropley Crab, Cash Broadus, Raspberry Jr., Jason R. Nelson, Creepy Paper, Jamie Soot, Michael Laughlin, Lindsay Keller, Mike Wright, Greer Weaver, Kelsey Carruthers, Linz Gibbon, Drake Holvig, Only Child, Michael M, Wesley Akers, Riaz K, Emily Medeiros, Pip, Heather Wynn, Graves, Devon Sweatshirt, The Ordained Sinister Minister, and Philip Hoffman.
Hello everybody and welcome to Dystopian Simulation Radio. My name is Chris.
And I'm Linz.
And it's great to be recording with you again, Linz. How are you doing?
Good. I see you have the Northern Lights on your background there, Chris.
I do, and I see you don't, but they might potentially actually be outside your window.
Yeah, I'm in Sweden and Chris is in the UK and we're recording over Zoom so we can see each other.
Yes, we can see each other. We're trying something a little bit different. So, a little bit of a recommendation from Jordan of the Nighttime podcast, who we were fortunate enough to record a watch-along with for a fantastic movie, Video of the Dead, which hopefully will be up on his...
I think it's his YouTube channel or his Patreon.
I think
so we'll let you know.
We'll let you know. But it was a great time, and we recorded via... Zoom at that point. Normally we use some different things, and it was just so nice to be able to see each other when we were doing this versus, just audio. So we thought we'll give this a go, and hopefully the audio quality will maintain. If it doesn't work, we'll go back the other way next time.
Yeah, and knowing our luck, nothing ever works, and we do record everything 15 times, so yay!
Just as a reminder, everything we're going to talk about today, any pictures that go along with it, you can find over at our Instagram, which is
d.s.radio.
And if you're feeling especially kind, you can go over to our Patreon,
which is at patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio.
And we were actually, just before we went on air, having a bit of a chat about things that we're going to do on there. We've got some exciting things coming up. It's been a little bit bare bones so far, but we're going to add some flesh to those bones to construct some sort of horrible...
Patreon surprise.
Patreon surprise. That's what we'll have. And of course, recently you put out a bonus episode, Lindsay, with our friend Septembrio.
Yes, and that was amazing. It was about sleep paralysis. If you haven't checked that out yet, please do. Septembrio, aka Michael, is an absolute treat and a master of his paranormal craft. And you can also hear a seagull that frequently visits me, Steven Seagull, splat into the window pane in the first 2 minutes, which I left in, and it's amazing. And yeah.
Yeah, we've been getting lots of messages, people shitting their pants when that happens.
And Chris and I are trying to catch up and get ahead of ourselves because we did fall behind after some bad luck the other month when we lost a few episodes. And yeah, this is why we haven't been able to create much bonus content, but we're definitely getting on top of it now. And we're also thinking about going into the video area of podcasting and streaming and everything. So hopefully There'll be some of that soon.
Yeah, I've got a hot tub ready for Twitch, and I will. I'll wear whatever you want, guys. Just give me money.
Yes, give Chris money for accidental nip slips. I have a lot of Ouija boards and divination fortune telling tools that I'm going to be using throughout Halloween on DSR as well. So look forward to those coming up. Let's see if we can contact some spirits and yeah.
Also, as well, we had quite a few messages and comments on Instagram after our last full episode, which was regarding your experiences with spiritualism. A few regarding a South Park episode. Apparently follows exactly the same plot as your experience, so you might want to check.
Really?
You might want to check.
I did
that
not
out.
check the messages, but can you share with us actually?
Yeah, sure.
While we're on the subject,
I'll share that with you. And the other thing that people were messaging about was that they had never heard the term prison wallet before.
I did see that.
And some people were asking, Chris, what do you keep in your prison wallet? And the answer is, of course, Werther's Originals.
I thought you were going to say the hopes and dreams of the nation, but Werther's Originals is also useful, and I'll never accept any snacks from you again. That's all I'm going to say.
They're individually wrapped. Don't worry about it. Right, by the way, Linz, I completely forgot to mention this, but we are actually in season 2 now.
Oh, I did notice that. And I was like, when did Chris draw the line behind season 1?
Yeah, so I did actually forget to mention that we were in season 2 for 3 episodes now. So the line that was drawn was at the 1 year mark. So we've been doing this for 1 whole year now. If this is your first time listening to us, go back, check out the archives. We haven't been taken off the air yet.
But it's only a matter of time.
Let's see if we can get cancelled today.
Is that a challenge?
It is. And I thought that it's time for us to go big. It's Halloween. It's spooky season. And we need to cover something that's going to take off and land us a Netflix show.
Hell yes.
All these podcasts are getting Netflix shows.
What about Linz? What about Chris?
Yeah. At least 50% of this team is charming.
Yeah, sorry, Chris.
Yeah. I've got a spooky Halloween case with us today that I call Making a Mummy Rear. So mummies are one of the lesser loved Halloween monsters. Everybody loves the ghost and the vampire. The Wolfman and Frankenstein rose to prominence in the 80s. But consistently all the way through the history of Halloween, the mummy has been there. Now, skeptics will say this is because of the abundance of toilet paper in the 20th century and beyond. Others, however, will show some love to these bandage boys that awaken in the middle of the night and are legally distinct from your garden variety zombie. So, Linz, mummies. They tuck us in at night and bring us warm cocoa. But what do you know about the other kind of mummies?
They are from ancient Egypt. They get their brains pulled out of their noses. They're buried with all their stuff that they can't take with them.
Mm-hmm.
They're all bandaged up, kind of similar to the pocong of Indonesia. You know, I thought that they had their arms bandaged around their chests and their legs bound together. However, when you kind of see them depicted in horror movies and such, they're kind of just like both arms out, kind of like a zombie wrapped in bandages, like you said. Which
is why they're legally distinct from zombies. However, I do know that there are hopping zombies over in Asia, but it is somewhat difficult to be threatening when you're hopping, and if the legs were tied together.
Yeah, but a pocong, the Indonesian ghost, I suppose you'd call them, they not only hop, but they can also move at an incredible speed. So you could see one in the distance, you know, that looks an inch tall on the horizon. And then within seconds, they're right beside you, staring at your face. So that's sneaky. Where the fear part of it comes in. And they also, I read in a newspaper when I used to be over in Indonesia, they also get blamed for stealing TV sets in rural villages. So that's fun.
Well, everybody needs a TV, even pochongs. Anything else that you know about the good old mummy, though?
The good old mummy. They just go Meh, and sort of follow you around at a really slow pace, and I think they smell bad.
Well, at least one of those things that you've just said is wrong. Let's find out.
Okay.
Now,
I think I know, but I'll listen.
indulge me.
I'll indulge you.
Right then, so you've already answered part of this question, but where do mummies come from, Linz?
Ancient Egypt.
Ancient Egypt. You're right. Anywhere else?
They come from other. Oh, let me think. Am I just being stupid? Then I don't know.
Examples of mummies have been found in Egypt, the Canary Islands, Libya, South Africa, China, Japan, Iran, Serbia,
Yeah.
the Philippines, Czechia, Denmark, Hungary, Italy, Canada, Greenland, Mexico, the USA, Australia, New Zealand, and just about all over South America.
So pretty much everywhere.
Yeah,
Apart
pretty
from
much.
England.
Yeah, well, your answer could have been almost anywhere. You would have been right. So well done if you're playing along at home and you guessed literally any continent except Antarctica, where, of course, mummies dare not tread due to the prevalence of the apex predator in the region, the abominable snowman. Now, the mummies in the countries mentioned range from mummification being a widespread practice, such as in Egypt, to literally just one instance in the USA. Even in Northern Europe, though, which is largely missing from that list, has things like bog bodies, which is, in itself, a type of mummification.
Accidental mummification.
Examples have been found, though, in Denmark, Sweden, the UK, Ireland, Germany, and the Netherlands. As you mentioned, they are accidental. They're also naturally occurring. What we're talking about is distinct from that, though, today. We're talking about that good old-fashioned, bandage-wearing, perfectly preserved pharaoh. The type you didn't listen about in school. So let's put that to the test. Linz, how does one make a mummy?
I think you whack like a body on a table or a big slab, I like to imagine.
That is the technical term, whack one on there, yeah.
And then I think you start to preserve them in sort of like herbs and whatnot. And then you start removing like organs, like the classic pulling the brain out of the nose with a hook and all that stuff. And then you put all the organs in jars. I think you mummify the organs. And then you wrap the body up in like bandages or cloth or something.
Well, fortunately, I am an expert in this.
I thought you would be.
Yeah. And also, fortunately, that I have a pharaoh right here. It's amazing what you can get off the back of a truck, and we are going to make a mummy right now.
Ooh.
So, just a disclaimer, don't try this at home. Mummies are only to be created by licensed professionals.
Like Chris.
Exactly. So, step one, you already mentioned this, but we need to remove the brain. And how would you go about doing this?
Hook up the nose on a bit of string.
Hook up the nose on a bit of a string. It's actually false that that's how it was done.
That was my favorite bit, but I also wondered how you could pull a huge brain out of a nostril.
Exactly. It doesn't really work. It's wildly impractical to try and pull a brain out through a nostril.
Maybe if you like shove a screwdriver in and go like tuck, 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 so it kind of like mushes it up and then go cluck, cluck, cluck on the back of the skull and like just collect what comes out.
You know, you're actually right. So
no shit, really?
Yeah. What they did was they used a special rod to liquefy the brain by essentially just jabbing it in and out and going and very carefully blending up the grey matter into a lovely soup. So get cracking, my assistant.
It's not working, Chris, honestly.
Well,
this man is not complying either.
Well, he is 3,000 years old. Give him a break. So step 2, brain drain. Once you've mashed that brain up, you need to remove it. So yes, it does come out through the nostril, but not in one piece. So we need to contort the body and use the power of gravity, although that hasn't actually been discovered yet, but to let the liquefied brains just drain away out of the nostril, whichever one you like. Discard those brains, make a soup with it, make a broth, I don't care. Step 3, fill the cavity. So now we've got one lovely ancient Egyptian with an empty head. And I'm not talking about Akhenaten, eh? He was a terrible idea with shitty ideas about religious reform. History. But we do need to fill this cavity with something. So any ideas what the Egyptian would fill that hole with?
I'm going to say like a piece of cloth with some inscription, like some kind of like good luck inscription on it.
You're not wrong about there being some good luck involved in the process, but it's not brought in yet. So it's not a
Oh.
rag. What they would actually do, they'd fill the hole in the head with a mixture of tree resin and fragrances. So if they
Oh, they
were,
do smell good.
yeah, they smell very good. It's like they've been using Lynx. The resin obviously keeps air from decaying any remaining matter inside the brain or inside the head. And the fragrances prevented the mummy from smelling putrid. And of course, when Tutankhamun's tomb was opened, it is famous that Howard Carter remarked, "It smells like a new car in here."
One of those pine cone tree air fresheners.
Lemony fresh. So, step 4, the main course. We have preserved the head, but what of the body? This is ancient Egyptian. Walt Disney. Now, hand me that ancient scalpel over there. We just need to cut open the lumbar and remove the organs, which we should.
There you go.
Thank you very much. And now what we need to do is place all of these in separate jars for later. But we must remember to leave one organ inside. So which organ should we leave in here?
The heart, so we can weigh it and see if they're. No, that's a completely different ancient culture.
no, you're right. You are right.
Oh.
There's so the heart is what was left, and I do believe there was something in ancient Egyptian religion about it being weighed, but that is not actually the specific reason why they left it still in the body. So it's traditionally thought of in Egyptian culture as where thoughts came from, not the brain, which is why they just discarded the brain as if it was nothing. But a pharaoh or an individual, it doesn't have to be a pharaoh who is being mummified, would need the heart to think in the afterlife.
That is really cute. Like, it's so wrong, but it's so adorable. Silly ancient Egyptians.
You silly ancient Egyptians. So, right, now we need to wash out this new cavity, and we're going to do that with palm wine, and then fill it with a blend of 7 secret herbs and spices, just like the Colonel. No,
You're so silly.
I can reveal the recipe. And the recipe of spices that we used were every spice available except frankincense. So myrrh, cassia, ginger, scary, sporty, all the spices. Throw whatever's available in your spice rack and then mix them up together.
Sriracha.
Yeah, a little bit of that, and that's absolutely fine.
It sounds delicious. I think for Halloween, we should make this drink with like raisins in some kind of wine and heat it up. And then we can have like mummy wine.
That sounds great to me. Just leave the frankincense out of it.
I feel like frankincense should have been put in because it's kind of like Frankenstein. And I feel like that would be the thing that activated the mummy.
Yeah, but I think that's why they left it out, because it sounds too similar to Frankenstein, and that's a completely different Halloween monster. We're making a mummy here. Come on. Leave it alone.
Okay.
Step 5. Unleash the natron.
Sorry?
The natron.
Oh, I thought you said the matron. I was like, no, don't do that.
Well, we need to use a substance called natron, and it's actually a shit ton of it. So natron is a kind of salt, which was plentiful at the time. It was often gathered from riverbeds and so on, naturally occurring. And it's the key drying elephant. It's the key drying element in the mummification process. No elephants involved at this stage. Because you see, we humans are rather wet, and mummies are quite dry. So natron is what really preserves the body into a mummy. So dump as much natron as you can find on the body, and then a bit more. Entomb it in that salty goodness. Wait 70 days, and you've got yourself a mummy.
70?
Yeah.
Oh, I was about to ask, like, how long does it take before you are mummified? But yeah.
Well, any less time, supposedly, and the body wouldn't be dehydrated properly, and would therefore rot. And more than 70 days, and the mummy would be too stiff, and we wouldn't be able to manipulate the limbs for the next step.
Oh, all right. There's more. I thought that was it. Wrap it up, Bob's your uncle.
No. Now, sources vary on this. Some say 70 days, some say 40 days is the salty spot. Let us know if you... No, you're not trying along at home. Put that natron back in the kitchen cupboard. Step 6. We're nearly there. Wax on, wax off. So give that salty boy or girl a big wash down to clear the skin for the resin wax that we'll now be applying to the outside of the body. Slather it on real good.
Oh, yeah.
Because we also need it as a binding agent for the linen bandages that we will now wrap the body in from head to toe. But every 3 layers, Linz, don't forget to pop one of those small amulets for good luck in that box over there.
Well, you know I love popping in lucky amulets, so I won't forget this step, Chris.
So they're to ward away evil and to guide this gentleman to life. And then, once you're done, slather a bit more resin on top of that to make this surfboard waterproof. And now, hey, looks like we've got ourselves a mummy. But wait, there's more. Step 7. Final touches. So now we've got our mummy. We just need to pop our lovingly preserved pharaoh into a sarcophagus, which, as this is a pharaoh, will be an ornately decorated casket. We'll also place in there some belongings from him as well to guide him through the afterlife. And you were right before, we need to pop those other organs into those jars and place them next to the sarcophagus. We then need to seal up and apply resin to the outside of the whole sarcophagus to make it all airtight. And then all we have to do is arrange several thousand slaves to construct a pyramid, and Bob's your uncle.
Easy as that.
So of course, you weren't following along at home. But if you would like to be a mummy this Halloween, I got you, fam. Perhaps one of the reasons for a mummy's enduring Halloween popularity is the ease of dressing up like one. All you need is a ton of toilet roll. Don't pretend that you haven't got a pandemic preserve of TP. Just dip into that. Have a friend. Just roll. And just begin to wrap you up and just act like Kylie Minogue. Just keep spinning around. And before you know it, you've got yourself a low-budget mummy. But did you know? You might be missing one key element. So I want to talk about the fungus among us.
Ew, not fungus again, Chris.
Yes,
we had the zombie thing. Oh, for God's sakes. It's always fungus.
Well, mummies are fun guys. Ancient Egypt stretched a crazy amount of time as a civilization. So much that Cleopatra actually lived closer to the launch of the iPhone than the building of the Great Pyramid. The mummy technique that we laid out a few moments ago was the perfect form. But older, more rudimentary forms existed, and also cheaper versions were available for lay people. And some mummies have been found to carry the fungus Aspergillus niger, which can potentially lead to serious respiratory illness. So potentially, when disturbed, this mold can be inhaled by excavators. So if you want to be totally accurate this Halloween, just add a few dabs of marker pen to represent black mold. So anyway, Linz, what do you think about that whole procedure of making a mummy?
I'm actually quite impressed about waiting a whole 70/40 days, whatever it may be. I kind of like the idea because now I feel like it's just so clinical and awful. It's like, okay, most people don't get an autopsy unless they died under some kind of mysterious circumstances. But otherwise, it's like embalm, chuck it in the thing, okay, goodbye in the ground. But there it's like you're getting all sorts of nice scented things stuffed in your head. You're getting a nicely decorated coffin, some good luck charms, for the road. Yeah, it just seems like a nicer affair. And also you can spook people hundreds and thousands of years in the future when they rediscover your body. It's not just a skeleton. It's like, yeah, looking pretty good for 1,000-year-old corpse.
Well, it's funny that you should mention that. Now we're going to go on to talk about the curse of the mummy.
Hell yes.
Now, as we all know, mummies now live in the British Museum and at night get up and wander around aimlessly with Robin Williams. We all saw that documentary.
And they live in the Hancock Museum, which is a lot closer to home.
They do.
And you can see the varnish close up.
Are mummies really cursed? And what does this curse entail? So, Linz, have you ever heard of a cursed mummy or a mummy's curse?
Yes. Aren't like all of them rumored to be cursed?
That's racist.
No, it's not. It just goes with the territory of finding an old mummy. People just, you in every movie or every documentary, you see that little like crowbar thing go in the casket. You push it down and it goes, and then everyone starts going, ah! And then as they're traveling home on planes, they start dying. Planes crash. All sorts of shit happens. Everyone knows that. No living person who's seen a mummy is alive. Is alive today.
I've definitely never seen one at the Hancock Museum.
Have you ever met one? A person who's seen a mummy and is alive? No, you haven't.
No, I haven't actually.
Exactly, because they're all dead.
When you speak about curses, obviously, a lot of Egyptian tombs still exist. They've been dug up, the Valley of the Kings and so on. And several tombs have been found with what have been translated as curses inscribed on the doors. May your firstborn have a plague of scarabs, eat all their sandwiches, and things like that. Although this is far from the norm.
You're so silly, Chris.
I translated these hieroglyphics.
Okay, fair enough.
So it's not normal for this, but then these things would only be there to ward away people who were going to be raiding the tombs and so on. And most Egyptian tombs have no mention of curses anywhere. So this idea of a pharaoh's hex was around long before it was popularized in the opening of Tutankhamun's tomb. In fact, over 100 years before that was opened, the idea of a pharaoh's curse began to be written about in horror stories. But where did that idea come from? So, Linz, any guesses? What inspired the idea of a mummy's curse and where?
I guess it would be like reported in newspapers or written in books, or maybe H.P. Lovecraft was like, that would be spooky.
Well, I love the story that you've concocted there. Unfortunately, none of it is true. So the answer is actually London, England, and strippers.
What?
A strip show
like
of
stripping the bandages off. Like,
yeah, a strip show.
Give me
of
your money,
sort.
I'll ruin your family.
Just like
sort
that.
of curse.
So this was a vaudeville act in which mummies were brought on stage and unwrapped layer by layer in a kind of morbid strip show. And this was popular due to the interest in Egypt and the many treasures being at the time.
Wait, they unwrapped actual mummies in front of an audience.
Actual mummies in front of an audience.
Okay, I was so in with the jokes that I truly believed there was some kind of striptease involved. Okay, shit. This makes a lot more sense, yeah.
Yeah, so they literally brought actual mummies onto the stage and unwrapped
to
them.
unravel them.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, not nice, but interesting.
Presumably sent them off stage again to be wrapped back up for the matinee show. And then what you would find here is this idea has been really put forth that this is where the origin of it came from by the late Egyptologist Dominic Montserrat, which is just a great name.
Monsieur Rat.
Montserrat.
Monsieur Rat, you are back today.
And he claimed that horror writers witnessed these shows and then concocted the idea of a curse being associated with unwrapping these mummies. And mummies were, for want of a better term, pretty common way back when. There were even mummy merchants acquire and sell mummies to the West as curiosity pieces, or more commonly, as medicine. So yes, they actually would ground up mummies and tried to cure, well, anything with it. Any ailment. It was obviously mummy was the answer.
But wait, why did they think that an ancient dead person would cure anything? Where did that come from?
I mean, the idea still persists a lot today, not necessarily with mummies, but with, a lot of Eastern medicine will use dried something. and
Oh,
it's
like
the
keratin
benefit.
from horns and shells.
Yeah, things like that. Or,
Okay, so it was just like folk medicine or a...
yeah, it was just an idea. It was just something that people were taking, and it was popular at the time. And, Westerners will pop anything in their mouth.
What? Speak for yourself, Chris.
It was obviously a placebo. Nobody ever got better by consuming ground up Cleopatra. But the demand was such that people even began making fake mummy powder to meet the needs of curious Western faces.
So you're telling me I could likely source some antique mummy powder for my growing oddities collection? That's all I'm hearing, Chris.
You could, although it might have been snapped up before, it might have been consumed. So it might be it might be used mummy powder.
Even better.
So the most enduring tale of a mummy's curse must be that of Tutankhamun. Lots of different pronunciations of it. I'm going with Tutankhamun. So, Linz, what do you know about King Tut?
He was a little guy, died quite early. That's about it. Really famous.
Yeah.
The go-to guy when you think about, well, yeah, Cleopatra's not a guy. The go-to guy when you think about ancient Egypt. King Tut.
You're right, very much the go-to guy, but not always. So, King Tut was small because he was a boy king. He ascended the throne at 9 years old, but died just 9 years at 18. So, watch out, Charles. He wasn't particularly important in life, but in death, he found fame thousands of years later when his tomb was discovered in the Valley of the Kings. Now, the reason why he is the most famous is because quite unusually, his tomb was entirely complete when found, untouched by tomb raiders. Except, of course, Howard Carter and his financial backer, Lord Carnarvon, who were now the tomb raiders, who entered into the tomb wearing hot pants and tight green t-shirts with the midriff showing, and then they pulled back the sealed stones in November of 1922. Ancient hot air rushed out to meet them. Or was it a curse washing over them?
A curse. 100%.
Well, perhaps, but strange things had been going on around this excavation. So before they even broke through the walls, so Carter sent word on the wire to Carnarvon that he may have found something, and to get over to the Valley of the Kings straight away. However, moments later, Carnarvon's staff burst into his room to tell him that something very strange was happening with his pet canary. And when I say strange, I mean that it was in the middle of being partially digested by a cobra at the time.
Oh my gosh!
And snakes were long thought to hold significance to the ancient Egyptians, and perhaps even be messengers of the pharaohs themselves, delivering their vengeance to those who would wrong them. Carnarvon, however, did not believe in such silly superstitions. After the excavation of King Tutankhamun's tomb, both men became world famous, and Tutanmania ran wild. Suddenly, the world was Egypt mad, and for a brief moment again, Egypt was the centre of the world's thoughts. There was no time to stop for the men, though. They had to find more adventure, more plotting for their next move. So just a few months post-excavation, Carnarvon was bitten by a mosquito on his cheek. Okay, nothing too bad. Who hasn't been bitten by a bug, right? Except that Carnarvon had the misfortune to nick the bite while shaving. And this small cut led to the wound becoming infected, which in turn led to a blood infection, then fever, and shortly afterwards, Carnarvon was dead. But was this King's revenge? Supposedly,
yes, of course it was.
Well, supposedly, Tutankhamun's body bore a scar in exactly the same place that Carnarvon was bitten by the mosquito. Sources also report that on the night that he died, there was a power cut that went across Cairo. And also his faithful dog, a terrier named Susie, all the way back on the shores of England, suddenly let out a long, painful howl before dropping stone dead. Word would not reach Carnarvon's home of his death until the following morning.
Oh my gosh, is that actually all true?
Supposedly it is. Definitely his death's true. Definitely there was a power cut in Cairo that night. I'm not 100% sure about the mark in the same place. That might be a little bit of pizzazz, potentially.
That would have been amazing and very, very creepy.
Mm.
Even if it's not true, what a story.
Yeah. His dog did die, though, and his canary was eaten by a cobra.
Come on, if there was ever any inkling of a curse, that has got to be it.
Exactly.
Like basically his entire quote unquote family died in one night.
Well, this was just beginning.
No.
So this began a spate of deaths. George J. Gould was an American tourist to the area, contracted a sickness after visiting the tomb, and died of an unexplainable fever. Another tourist, Prince Ali Kamal Fameh Bey, was shot dead in cold blood by his French wife of 6 months, shortly after visiting the tomb and photographing themselves in front of it. Lord Carnarvon's half-brother was next, who died in a bizarre dentistry accident when a routine operation developed into blood poisoning, just like his brother. Ahmed Kamel Bey, relation to Prince Ali mentioned previously, an Egyptian researcher into ancient Egyptians, died after visiting the tomb of a lung infection. Like, guys, just don't visit this damn tomb. All of that happened in 1923.
This has got to be like some dormant fungus, like you were talking about before, that just kind of got released. No, because were blood infections just common then? Did they just go unnoticed or something?
I guess, I mean, I'm not an expert, but I guess logically that there was primitive medical help at the time. So I guess that you'd be more commonly die from a blood infection, or maybe the drugs that were around at the time were not so effective in preventing blood infections. But, I mean, to get a blood infection from some dentistry work, just...
Yeah. I guess it's like sepsis, isn't it? It's like a blood infection that you didn't notice the symptoms of. So, like, if you're in Egypt looking around tombs and you feel a bit hot and a bit confused and a bit faint, you might not think, oh, I have some kind of infection, but wouldn't you notice an infected, like the mosquito bite that he that he caught when he scratched? Like, wouldn't that look kind of gnarly?
I mean, I think it rapidly progressed, and bearing in mind that he was out in Egypt, in Cairo at the time, and certainly they wouldn't have had the medical facilities available then that they would have, in other areas of the world. So it may just have been bad geographical locating on his behalf as to
that's very unfortunate. But then his brother's dying back home. His dog died. His canary got eaten.
Well, this still wasn't the end of it.
For God's sakes.
In 1924, Archibald Douglas Reed was working as an X-ray analyst and was employed by the Egyptian government to scan the mummies. However, the morning after he completed his first batch of X-rays, he fell ill. And less than a month later, he was dead of unknown causes. One of the excavators, Hugh Evelyn White, shot himself in a moving cab in 1924, leaving a letter claiming that he had succumbed to a curse that had forced him to disappear.
What?
But still, there's more. Next, Sir Lee Stack, who was one of the first tourists inside the tomb, was shot repeatedly when his car was attacked by a group of students.
What were they studying? Carjacking.
Another really interesting case that surrounds this was Professor Aaron Ember, who, considering his name, quite ironically died in a house fire in 1926 when he refused to leave his house until he retrieved an ancient copy of the Book of the Dead that he had been researching. It's rumoured that this copy had been sent to him by Howard Carter. Next up, a little bit of a break here for the curse, but in 1928, Arthur Cruttenden Mace, who was another member of the excavation team, his health suddenly began to take a downward turn unexpectedly, and he was shipped back from Egypt to Blighty, and soon afterwards died of a mysterious illness, once again leaving a note. But this time, no mention of a curse, but he did claim that somebody was poisoning him with arsenic. Sir Bruce Ingram did not die, but he did suffer a very unfortunate series of home events. Firstly, his house burned to the ground, the fire, and then he decided that he was going to start rebuilding it, only for a flash flood to appear and destroy the foundations.
Oh my God, this is getting biblical.
And then when he finally rebuilt it, it burned down again.
Jesus Christ, build it somewhere else, man.
well, he had, at this point, of course, lost his no-claims bonus.
Acts of God.
Well, supposedly, the reason for all this was because he had been gifted a paperweight made from a mummy's hand that featured a scarab bracelet. And when investigated further, this bracelet referenced fire, water, pestilence.
Oh my God, that's so cool, but so fucked up, but so cool.
Now, Howard Carter's secretary, Richard Bethel, was next. He was found mysteriously dead at an elite gentlemen's club in London in 1929. And I will just point out that gentlemen's club meant something quite different back then. He wasn't...
So an actual strip club, where they're not stripping mummies.
No, he was found dead in a sort of... he was found dead in a club for wealthy gentlemen to sit around a fire. He wasn't found dead at a shoe show.
Okay.
He was found mysteriously smothered to death, and nobody was ever charged with his death. 4 days later, Edgar Steele, who handled the Egyptian artifacts upon delivery to the British Museum, suddenly died after a routine stomach operation, and he was otherwise completely healthy. Now next, we go back to Richard Bethnal, who was Howard Carter's secretary, to find that his father committed suicide.
Oh.
So, Linz, I'd like you to please read the following newspaper extract from the February 21st, 1930 edition of the San Pedro News Pilot.
Okay. Man haunted by Pharaoh's curse is dead. London, February 21st. His mind harried by thoughts of the Pharaoh's curse and the recent death of his son, 78-year-old Lord Westbury today, fell or threw himself to death from his bathroom window on the 7th floor of St. James's Court. His body crashed through a glass veranda ceiling 100 feet below and knocked over a woman there. She was so badly cut by broken glass and so affected by shock, it was necessary to take her to a hospital. Lord Westbury was dead when he was picked up. An inquest into the death was held a few hours afterwards, and a verdict of suicide, while of unsound mind, was rendered. The dead man, he was the 3rd Baron of his name, had been in ill health for some time. Lord Westbury for months has worried over the strange circumstances of the death of his son, Richard Bethel, 46, who was secretary of Howard Carter, whose investigation in Egypt disclosed the treasures of an ancient Tutankhamun. Bethel's death, while apparently from natural causes, revived discussion of the superstition of a curse resting upon meddlers with the tombs of the pharaohs. His was the 10th death among people connected with the exploration of Tutankhamun's tomb. Carter, chief disturber of the tomb, is still alive.
So elsewhere, it was reported that Lord Westbury's home was also found to be full of undocumented artifacts from Tutankhamun's tomb, presumably gifted to him by his son. However, as mentioned at the end of the article there, still alive was Howard Carter for 17 more years. And when he finally passed at 64 of Hodgkin's disease in his London flat, at least 18 more undocumented items were found in his home. And once returned to Egypt, the curse appeared to stop. For now, at least.
Ooh.
So,
Chief Disturber.
yeah. So Lynn's, I mean, obviously, that's the big thing here, that he's the chief disturber of doom, is the person who is allowed to live with it the longest. I mean, you could say that King's disease was his curse, so to speak, if you wanted to go along those ways, but he seems to be the person who was almost least affected by all of this, yet was the first person inside the tomb.
I guess he was the least physically affected, but everybody else around him, kind of watching what was happening to them, he must have thought at some point, like, is there a curse? Is this my fault? But if he was worried, he never returned all the artifacts, so he didn't care that much.
That's
It's
pretty
like,
much
mine.
that's pretty much the MO of the British Empire. No, we're not returning these. No.
Yeah, it's like finders, keepers. Find your own treasures.
Well, you should have stayed alive, shouldn't you, you 3,000-year-old mummy? It's your own fault, really. So, Linz, let's wrap this mummy up. What do you think of the idea of an ancient curse being tied to disturbing a grave?
Oh, legit. Of course. Totally believe in that. I don't believe in a lot of things, but I always say I believe in the ancient Egyptian mummy curses. No, but it's explainable. I mean, some of these people had operations and they died of blood infections, and a bird being eaten by a cobra. Yeah, okay, I can see it. There's some like coincidental things in there, like the guy dies, the dog dies. It's things, unfortunate things are happening in the same sort of, period of time. Like all of those, what was it, 1922 to 1923? Was like the majority of them.
Yeah, that was the big split.
The early segment, yeah. Like, I mean, that's pretty wild. But I do feel like you mentioned earlier, that fungus and everything. It's like, I think they disturbed some living bacteria because one guy had like a lung infection, right? And he was x-raying them all. And then, I think it was a lot of unfortunate events in that spate. And it's probably something to do with environment and, medical care back then.
You have to remember as well that these became an instant tourist destination.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got, we covered Disney and deaths at Disney in the past.
Yeah.
And if you have enough people walk through any set of doors anywhere in the world, some of them are going to die. So there's a certain amount of that in there, but I do think the idea of some kind of curse being tied to disturbing a grave, not necessarily a tomb, but any kind of grave. That's something that pervades multiple cultures all around the world. I don't think in any culture it's considered good luck to disturb a grave.
Yeah, no.
How many horror movies have we seen where at the end it's all because it was built on a Native American burial ground?
Yeah, but there is that island in Indonesia where they bury their dead in the sides of like a cliff. And every year they take them out and they walk them around the village and redress them and hang out with them, essentially.
Yeah. I think I saw that on Dark Tourism, the Netflix show, where they do that.
Oh, I don't even think it could be classed as dark tourism. It's just walking your relative around. Yeah. But I get it. It is kind of morbid, but it's kind of sweet. But other than that, there's no case where disturbing. I guess that's not disturbing. It's your own family. And it's expected in tradition there. But going to a stranger's grave, prizing it open and like stealing all their shit. That's the most disrespectful move you can make.
Yeah. Those mummies were placed there for a reason. They've got a reason to be pissed off. So if they are coming after you very slowly with their arms outstretched, they are justified.
I wonder where that comes from.
I think... So as I said, they're quote-unquote legally distinct from zombies. Essentially, zombies are just unwrapped mummies and vice versa. There's slight differences between them. But, I'm pretty sure they use the same frames of animation for both in Scooby-Doo. I'll put it that way.
That's That's how you know officially what's what in the
Exactly.
monster world.
So we've talked about the main curse, which is, Tutankhamun's, which is still out there. So watch out, everybody. But I would like to finish this episode off by talking about a modern,
Your mummy?
not my mummy, but a mummy named Alan, or should we say Tutankhamun?
Oh
So-
my God. What is this? What is this now?
In 2008, heavy smoker and former taxi driver Alan Billis developed a persistent cough, and fearing the worst, he went to the doctor, who confirmed that unfortunately it was lung cancer and it was also terminal, and that he had just 6 months to live. So Alan was practical about the situation. Being a grandfather, he was troubled that his grandchildren would have nothing to remember him by. One evening, while he was reading the paper, he saw an advert. Mummy Wanted. A team of scientists were seeking a terminally ill person who would have no problem being mummified after they died of natural causes. Alan sat back and thought, yeah, that'll help them remember me.
Sounds like a legacy I want to leave.
Yeah. So he put in an application, and luckily he was successful, especially as he was the only applicant. Now, sadly, Alan did pass away, and his wishes were fulfilled. He was mummified by a team in Sheffield using traditional ancient Egyptian methods as best that they could work out, after being perfected by the team practicing repeatedly on mummifying pigs. The whole procedure was filmed and broadcast on Channel 4 in the UK in a TV show called Mummifying Alan. And Alan, the mummified taxi driver, is currently located in London's Gordon Museum.
We can see Alan.
You can see Alan. So he was potentially the first person in over 3,000 years to be mummified using traditional Egyptian methods. They did use some ways of speeding it up a little bit, but they did use natron. They did use everything that we described earlier. Of course, there have been other mummifications across the years, most famously perhaps Vladimir Lenin, who was mummified and whose body can still be viewed today due to how they've done it, but it was mummified in a very different way, and even calling him a mummy is kind of not right. So that's not
Preserved,
really,
I guess.
He's preserved. So that's the kind of difference there. But what do you know? It went from pharaohs in Egypt, lay people in Egypt, to London taxi drivers.
That's actually amazing. Like, what a way to turn your death into just something. I mean, if nothing, it's memorable.
It's very memorable, and I'm sure his grandchildren will never forget that, and they can always just pop into the museum and see Uncle Alan.
That's really sweet. Actually, like, and I know it's bonkers, and like, who the hell would do that?
You can,
Other than a London cabbie, but like, it's just amazing.
You can find some quotes online from his wife, who's just very sort of practical about it. Like, yep, that was a bit strange, but that was Alan. And yes,
God, he had a wife.
yeah, and
That is okay. That's kind of more strange now. Either that, your partner is just a mummy in the London Museum.
well, she said something along the lines of, yeah, I've seen the mummy. No, I don't need to see it again.
Oh,
So I think her main concern, from what I remember from when I read the article, was what happens to the mummy after it's been mummified. You're not going to deliver it on my doorstep, are you?
oh no.
Certainly be a conversation starter.
Yeah, I guess it would go to a funeral home, wouldn't it? Paid for by the museum and maybe buried.
I would imagine so, although
Or they'll just put it in storage and go, oh, we'll rotate this to next year.
I mean, the thing is, these other mummies have lasted over 3,000 years using ancient techniques,
Yeah.
using slightly modified things with modern technology. Alan could be immortal now.
Do you think there's a curse? The cabbie curse?
The cabbie's curse.
The cabbie's curse from whoever finds him in 200 years in the storage room of the British Museum.
Yeah,
The only thing acquired from home turf.
Yeah, he'll come out and haunt anybody who dares use an Uber instead of a traditional black cab.
Yeah, he's like, Uber over my mummified corpse. Oh, this is too good.
So there we have it. That is the tale of the Mummy's Curse. I thought I'd give a little bit of love to a Halloween monster that maybe you don't think about as much. As I mentioned at the outset, everyone thinks about ghosts and vampires, Dracula, and so on. But I do have one fact for you about vampires, Linz, before we go.
Ooh, I always love a vampire fact.
Did you know that technically vampires don't exist?
Is that a trick question? Is this a dad joke? Oh God, it's a dad joke, isn't it? You're laughing.
Only if you don't count Dracula.
You know what? I could feel that it was a dad joke. Why did the aliens decide against visiting Earth?
I don't know. Why did the aliens decide against visiting Earth?
They read the reviews and it only had 1 star.
Hey.
Also, speaking of aliens, Tom DeLonge is back in Blink-182.
Exactly. We know where he is.
Mm-hmm. Where are you? I just got that.
Yeah, big news that he's back in Blink-182. Yep. I think he's still doing stuff with From the Stars, though.
He better. He's got to find aliens. That's his life's purpose.
From the Stars Academy did have their name attached to that footage that came out that showed an unidentifying flying object, and the military confirmed this footage is legitimate. They did not confirm that this was definitely a flying saucer or a UFO, but they did confirm that this footage that appears to show an alien craft is real. And obviously, that's enough of his mission completed that he can go back to pop punk.
Yeah, agree. It's time to go back to pop punk.
So that was our story all about mummies. So if you're dressing up as a mummy this Halloween, you've got lots and lots of facts to lay on people all about it. But we hope that you will join us again next time when we're going to be opening a case from Linz, and it's going to be on All Hallows Eve.
Ooh.
Thanks for that input there.
Well, I didn't know if you wanted me to sort of like hint at what the episode was about, but
it could be something spooky, right?
It is
on Halloween.
It is. It's a few short spooky parts of history for you, Chris. But I'm also, as I said earlier, I have Ouija boards and tools of divination and fortune telling teacups at my disposal here. So maybe expect a few videos of me using those. I don't know if you want to be involved, Chris. I could set it up so that you could see the Ouija board and, you know, if you can ask questions at least.
If spirits use Zoom, then we can get on it.
Yeah, anyone can. Oh, I can't. Can I spoil this? I have another part in my spiritualism journey coming up also. And that might be out this month, but Chris and I will talk about the schedule, but it's definitely incoming.
Well, we look forward to all of those things coming soon. We will see you next time, which will be on Halloween. And until then, stay spooky. Bye.
Stay wrapped up. It's getting cold out there. Oh, have what?
Tutankhamun's spatula?
That's spelled really weird. Tutankhamun's spatula. No, spectral. How do you pronounce that?
Just say of Tutankhamun's tomb.